There's 30,000 corporate lobbyists as well going through that revolving door. And believe you me, a lot of them, particularly those who might be lobbying on behalf of some pretty dodgy countries, know who to target. They know how to target them.
Sanchez, a very good-looking man, is married to Begoña Gomez, who is the daughter of a famous pimp.
There's a well-known hotel opposite the European Parliament in Brussels, which is known as the Love Hotel, where you could actually rent a room by the hour, and it's where people go to get their rocks off with their glamorous assistant.
Hello again, this is the Brussels Signal Studio. I'm Justin, and I'm accompanied as always by Alex, and this is the Interference Show. I was wondering if I should do some kind of hand gesture with the interference. Today we're talking about corruption.
Right, we're talking about financial interference, aren't we? And especially when it comes to what's going on in Spain.
Financial entrepreneurship. And it seems to be everywhere nowadays. I mean, is everyone on the take or what? I mean, obviously, the story that's broken over the last week or so is Spain, where there's all kind of nasty stuff surrounding Mr. Sanchez, the Prime Minister. And I tell you what do you think to this? I've been reading up, and one of the stuff they get up to on the continent, does this happen in the UK? On the continent, if you're a corrupt politician and you've got a mistress, you see, what you do, and it's very canny, I reckon, what you do is you put your mistress on the payroll of a state company. You see, you can get your mates to employ your mistress. Now, this is always normally men employing their mistresses. I don't know if women have you heard of this scam?
I know. Well, it was rife in the European Parliament. All those sort of juicy upper positions, and people who work out in the constituency on made-up salaries. I know that it has gone on, but in the UK, actually, we've got very strict rules governing who you can employ in your office in the Houses of Parliament. So unlikely to happen in the same way over here. Plus, we're not Mediterranean. The mistresses thing doesn't really fit in with the British stiff upper lip.
Right, no sex, we're British kind of thing. Right, I get.
Exactly.
Now, we have a guest, of course, to confirm the finer points of Spanish corruption, and his name is Hermann Tertsch. Thank you for finding a few minutes to join us, Hermann, again in the studio.
Very happy to be here with Signal.
So, I mean, what's going on? Is everyone in the Spanish government corrupt? Are all Spanish politicians corrupt? Is it more of a socialist problem than a problem in any of the other parties? And have you ever put your mistress on the payroll?
No, I didn't. I didn't. I wouldn't confess it either. So, but it's not only mistresses. It's pure prostitution what they have. Normally I hired and put on payrolls in enterprises of this in state enterprises. I mean, it's quite bizarre what is happening. It's a new degree. I would say we would have to look very, very deep into Spanish history to find such a bunch of corrupt people in government, but very, very deep. I would say centuries. And we have what we have is mob. We have the criminal gang in government, and that is Sanchez. Sanchez and the whole entourage of Sanchez are really people almost from the underworld. Socialism has something corrupt in itself, but then you have this element which is the Latin American, the Ibero-American socialism, which is organized crime itself. So, and that is what has been transported to Spain since 20 years, and now we are in the culmination. That's the peak. The peak of the catastrophe is this kind of people who, like Sanchez, who is more close to Maduro. And to Ortega, this kind of criminals who lead dictatorships in South America, than to what we would have called a civilized social democrat in Europe, in the continent. No, they're very, very dangerous people. They are now. They have absolutely no scruples. Some of them have absolutely no ideology. They cover them up. They have this banner of socialism.
It's true. It's true, isn't it? That the latest scandal did involve prostitutes. They were actually talking. They were caught. There's some kind of recording that's been released of aides in the government comparing prostitutes, and this has somehow leaked. I mean, is the government going to survive? They were saying, Maria, you should go with Maria. She's better than Claudia, kind of thing. Better in what sense? I'm not quite sure. Cheaper, maybe.
Take Nicoletta. Take
Take
Nicoletta. She's better than I don't know
no.
who. That's more or less the way they talked, and there's a different prostitutes, some transsexual prostitute as well. It seems a Colombian one. I mean, it's everything is we have hours and hours. I would say years of recorded conversations of these people, because there's some of them have been recording in the last 10 years all the conversations they had.
What, they're not
Secure
recording
themselves.
themselves, though, surely. Who's recording them? Who's recording them?
The recording, we have some people of the general secretary of the Socialist Party.
But who?
One of
He's
them.
not recording
Then
himself, though. Is this a bug in his office or something? Is it the Secret
no.
Service?
He's recording himself in conversations with others, because the assistant of all of them recorded everybody, and then you have other recordings made by other people.
They can blackmail each other. Listen, Alex, how about this one? In one of the recordings, there was a bit that said, "Oh, and by the way, don't tell my wife." It wasn't. They didn't quite use those words, but it was, "Oh, by the way, what excuse did you give your wife?" "Oh, I said, I was on an emergency business meeting." How about that? Would you trust your better half if he said, "I'm going on an emergency business meeting, won't be back till late"?
Well, considering my better half flips properties, if you had to go on an emergency business meeting, I knew he'd be telling a porky pie. I find myself strangely jealous of this situation, because in the United Kingdom, all it takes to overthrow a prime minister is that he happens to eat a piece of cake in his office, which is number 10 Downing Street, during COVID. And I remember at that time, all of the scandal about Boris Johnson, about the wallpaper he had and who had paid for it, and then eating some cake during COVID. I was thinking, this is so British and so rubbish. Why can't we have bunga bunga parties like they do on the continent? But it's amazing listening to what's gone on in Spain. From a Brit, from the outside looking in, okay, so Pedro Sanchez is a socialist, so obviously I think he's the pits, because nothing ever good came out of socialism. It is in fact sort of state ordained theft anyway. But from the outside looking in, this guy seemed really dapper, really elegant, almost like a sort of Netflix hero of a rom-com. Really good-looking guy, looks very sophisticated. The optics on Sanchez were amazing. And so now I'm learning about all the corruption going on in his coterie, and I'm thinking this actually should be a Netflix series, and I would be tuning in because it's much more interesting the stuff goes on over here.
Let's go to the beginnings from Sanchez, because that's a thing that explains some things of traces of the character, and that this Sanchez, a very good-looking man, is married to Begoña Gomez, who is the daughter of a famous pimp. So the father-in-law of Sanchez was an owner. He died last year. A family business which was several brothels, and then some famous saunas for gay saunas. And these gay saunas were famous because there were agreements with some groups of the police, so that they could make films and blackmail the clients, inside. So that is the kind of people where of the surrounding, and that's why the daughter of the pimp, who is Begoña Gomez, as soon as she was the wife of the prime minister, started, like if it was the last day, to make all kinds of businesses almost everywhere where she could.
It's incredible. I tell you one thing, though. I got a rude awakening when I became an MEP and going over to Brussels for the first time. Things are done differently in the European Parliament than in our own Parliament. And I'm not saying there are bars in Parliament that are full of political aides and MPs all getting it on and having affairs. I mean, I think this stuff does happen. In fact, I know it does happen. Okay. Politics invites a certain kind of behavior. But what I find so astonishing when I was elected to the European Parliament is how brazen some of this behavior is in other countries. I mean, there's a well-known hotel opposite the European Parliament in Brussels, which is known as the Love Hotel, where you could actually rent a room by the hour. And it's where people go to get their rocks off with their glamorous assistant. And you'd see MEPs from other countries walking through the red carpets. You know, I'm the big I am because I'm elected to the European Parliament, with this sort of little queue of very glamorous women behind him, you know, scuttling along with their designer handbags and their Louboutin heels. And you could see it everywhere, you know, really ugly, fat old MP with the most glamorous assistants. And you think,
Well,
right,
these are not my friends.
Right, you don't know these people. It's true, of course, because prostitution is legal in Belgium. Not only is it legal, you do get these hotels, these love hotels, where people can book a room by the hour, and I think it's not. I've ever used one, of course, but I think it's anonymous, isn't it? I heard it was anonymous, so you don't have to show I don't know if you have to show ID. Anyway, that's a subject maybe for another deep dive investigation.
the reason I know about it is because when I was a freshly elected MEP, I'd been chatting to someone and I was interested in speaking to them further about something to do with work. And they sort of said, oh, you know, meet me at this place at lunchtime. So I was in my office and I spoke to my assistants who'd already been working for MEPs in Brussels before. And I said, do you guys know where this is? And they both just burst out laughing and said, if I were you, I wouldn't go there. So
Well, as you mentioned Brussels, that brings us on to the under the radar section, because there are some things that perhaps people don't know about that have been happening, and it's still connected with corruption. Because now, look, I've got a little list of EU corruption stories. We have Qatargate, the alleged bribing of MEPs by Qatar. That's 3 years old now. There have been 0 prosecutions, incidentally. We have the Huawei, I've learned to pronounce it, scandal, which is the same thing happening, some kind of Chinese operatives allegedly bribing MEPs. We have Pfizergate, which is, of course, Madame von der Leyen and her text messages, maybe not doing deals with vaccine manufacturers. And there are other people, leaders of the EU, who have bad smell associated to them. I mean, people like Antonio Costa, president of the European Council. I'm not saying he was directly involved, but his party was involved in some kind of dodgy propaganda operation. Kaya Kallas, there was her husband who was allegedly involved in some kind of company selling stuff to Russia. That didn't do her popularity any good. It seems to me as if there is a huge amount of corruption in Brussels as well. Now, let's start with you, Hermann. How much corruption is there? Is this a sort of...
I think there is now a common denomination in the Commission, and that there's in this Commission, von der Leyen didn't want anybody who was clean, who was too clean, so that she has Teresa Rivera, the Spaniard, who is synonymous to corruption and synonymous to many of the big, huge offenses of the socialists for the security of Spain and for the ideological catastrophes that have been, ideologically based catastrophes that have been happening in Spain in the last times. So Teresa Rivera is the vice president.
She's the Spanish commissioner.
Yes,
right?
this is a Spanish commissioner, and she's probably on the same level of von der Leyen in this sense. But then you have many people there, as I say, Kallas. Kallas couldn't make any career anymore in his country, in her country, and she becomes the High Commissioner for Foreign Policy in the European Commission, no? Because my husband has been having huge affairs in breaking the embargo with Russia, and now she's Russia bashing in Brussels. So the cynicism which we have in Europe now is enormous. The party, this bipartisanship of the Socialist and the Popular Party is the corruption itself. It happens in Brussels, and it happens in a very obscene way here. And now they are in panic.
They're panicking. This is jobs for the boys, I guess, Alex, isn't it?
Yeah, but do you know what? The thing is, the culture in Brussels is quite unique because, first of all, if you are an MEP or a deputy, you are treated like a celebrity. You have your chauffeur-driven car. You have your £4,000 allowance where you don't even have to show receipts. You're paid every single time you go up to Parliament. You're given business class flights, business class trains, champagne receptions. There's 30,000 corporate lobbyists as well going through that revolving door. And believe you me, a lot of them, particularly those who might be lobbying on behalf of some pretty dodgy countries, know who to target. They know how to target them. They know the people that are going to be vulnerable to coercion and bribery. They can see the people who might be looking to line their pockets with money, the people who always accept the dinner invitations. They'll put little presents, little parcels in your pigeonholes that, you go in the morning as an MEP and open your mail and there's this little gift or that little gift. And also the salary is pretty obscene in terms of when you then look at the taxation. You're given a special EU tax, which is about 5% or something compared to paying 45% back in the UK. And so the whole lifestyle, and also because you're not at home, you're not in your own country, you're away from home, you're traveling a lot. It just invites, it is so easy, I think, for an MEP who thinks, I could make a lot of money here. I could go to all these wonderful dinners. I could be taken on these jet set trips to far-flung places, all paid for by the EU. The temptation to live the high life and then the addiction to that high life, I think, is very critical in what makes the EU such a hotbed of corruption. It is teeming with that sort of, glamorous but seedy existence that you just don't really get in a national parliament. Well, not in the UK as much.
We have to we have to go with like Javier Milei. We have to get in with the machine, with the saw.
With the chainsaw, somebody should come into the European Parliament with a chainsaw. Now that would be a nice photo shoot.
And the people are starting to wake up, and I think eventually it will be stopped. It will be stopped. Now they are afraid because they thought they would have government forever, and this kind of relation, bipartisanship, would ever ruling till eternity. But suddenly they see they are in danger.
Okay. Listen, well, Hermann, obviously you're the expert, and we appreciate your time filling us in on what's going on behind the scenes in the European Parliament. The only thing that's left now is for us to nominate a hero and a zero. This is a little thing, little tradition we're hoping to start here on Interference, and this is we nominate someone who's this week's hero and someone who's this week's zero. What do you reckon, Alex?
Well, it's got to be Pedro, hasn't it? He looked like a hero. He had all the Hollywood good looks, but it turns out he's a wrong 'un, and I think his days are numbered.
Right, okay. Mr. Sanchez, you are this week's zero, and now we need a hero.
Well, do it doesn't have to be a person, or can we nominate stuff? Because I want to nominate stuff.
Go on.
Okay, so I just, I'm a bit of I love military aircraft, by the way. I'm a bit of a nerd. I do like my aeroplanes. And I was so excited following Flight Tracker, watching those B-2 bombers take off from Missouri, go over the ocean, disappear. I mean, not only is that one of the sexiest aircrafts I've seen since the SR-71, that delivered 6 times 30,000 pounds worth of kinetic energy right down deep under the Iranian mountains. Boom! Bye-bye nuclear facilities. That has got to be one of the coolest things that has happened, not just in the last week, but in 2025.
Okay, so there we have it. This week's hero, was it B2, B-22?
The B-2 and the bunker buster bombs.
The bunker buster bombs are this week's hero. Well done. A special mention to one of our commentators here, or rather someone who's left a comment. He said that this week's zero should be Kierman Mao. How about that? They're referring to Mr. Starmer over there. Thanks for that comment. And this reminds me to ask you, the viewers, to leave comments. If there's something you'd like us to talk about, a question you'd like us to ask, maybe one of our guests, please do leave a comment and we'll get on that. Thank you very much, Hermann, for your time once again. Thanks, as always, Alex, for your star performance.
May I, one second? We have been joking very much about the corruption of Sanchez, but there's a very serious corruption of Sanchez, which is dangerous for whole Europe, and that are these connections through oil, through oil and through the drug trafficking of the regimes of South America.
Okay, well, we'll end on that up note. With sex, drugs, all we need is rock and roll now. Thanks again, and thanks for watching.